imagination simply contained in the mind? Or does it tap into an unseen world with messages waiting to be told? There is a place where legends cross over into our world, where strange visions and whispers beckon, and superstition takes hold. Step into the Black Cat's shadow.
Welcome back to the Black Cat Shadow. My name is Andy, and I'm one of your hosts podcasting from Kansas City, Missouri.
And I'm Phantom Dark Dave, broadcasting at you from the heart of Texas. With us today, we have an actress who is no stranger to the camera. Her filmography includes movies such as Vampires on Bikini Beach, Milo, House of a Thousand Corpses. She has made an appearance in American Horror Story, and she has written and starred in the mockumentary The Life Coach. Please give it up for the one and only Jennifer Jostyn. Jennifer.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I can't believe you referenced Vampires on Bikini Beach. That's a little bit embarrassing.
Well, we try to go all the way back and give credit where credit's due, and that's one of the greatest titles for a horror movie ever.
Oh, my God. I'm not sure if I ever saw that all the way through. I'm not sure if I ever even knew that it was finished and made all the way through.
Oh, wow.
It's really hard to find.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'll let you know. But so anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge fan of one of your films called Milo.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you. You play Claire Mullins, who, correct me if I'm wrong, you had done a few films before getting into this. This was about the time of your 8th film. And I was just going to ask you, what was it about this script that made you want to do the movie?
Yeah, that's funny. It's so long ago. It's hard to remember. Was that my 8th film? In terms of my career, that feels so early. And sort of my memory of that is being, I'm sure it was my 8th, but in terms of, real roles and kind of real movies, that felt sort of like my second big thing after I did a movie called The Brothers McMullen. And, to be honest, I wasn't so much choosing parts at that point, or really ever. That's a hard place to get to. As much as just, auditioning for things and hoping that people liked me and were kind enough to give me a part in a movie. So that movie, I remember auditioning for, and I think I auditioned for one of the smaller roles originally. I think she has a couple friends in the movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but she has a couple friends in the movie, and I think I auditioned for one of her friends who dies brutally, near the beginning of the film. And then the director, Pascal, was just very kind when I went in and patient, because I was, pretty new to auditioning. And I remember, asked me if I'd like to audition for a bigger role. And that was how that all went. And I think to answer your question more directly, I was really excited about working with him. He I could tell right away was a person who was excited about trying to make a really good movie, and I think that was right around when Blair Witch Project came out, and so horror movies were, starting to. Horror movies have always been big, of course, but like that was a heyday, and so I was just really excited to get to audition for something like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you actually kind of took the words out of my mouth of one of my other questions. I was going to ask if Claire was the actual only role that you auditioned for, but no, you pretty much said you went in just looking to get a part, and you got the star role.
Yeah, I did. I know. That was a lucky break for me that day.
Well, when you got talent, I guess it shows, right?
Oh, thank you. Well, I think everybody was. I remember Paula Cale, who played. I'm forgetting people's characters' names in it, but my friend in the movie, she had a lot more experience at that point than I did, and I remember sort of watching her and learning from her, and asking her a lot of questions as the movie went on, about just various things of how to be on set and how to whatever. I was still pretty new to things, but she was really fun to work with and really helpful, and I was grateful to have her alongside me.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought her up because she played your friend Marian in that movie, if I'm thinking right. And
thank you.
She had
Thank
to
you
be
for remembering.
She had to be kind of the tough girl character. She had to help you through the struggles you were going through with. For those who may not know, Milo, you have a child in a rain slicker who basically doesn't age and
right, exactly.
stalks poor Claire Mullins, who's Jennifer's character in this movie. And I loved it, and I think it really worked because you provided a level of, how do I say this, innocence to the character and vulnerability, but you were able to become kind of the survivor in the movie. And I think you fit that role perfectly, where your friend, co-host there, Paula, she nailed that tough girl role. So I think that was awesome how you guys were able to do that stuff together, because for the longest, she's like your long survivor friend in that film.
Right. Yeah, she's good at that. And she's like that in real life too. In fact, I still know her to this day, and she's very funny, and she's very quick, and she's always the person that says things when you're thinking it, but you're too scared to say it. So she kind of is that person in some ways. I'm not saying she is that character, but she's very sort of bold and brave.
Well, if next time you talk to her, you can let her know, I actually met somebody who likes this movie,
I will tell her that.
So with that being said, I wanted to know, with the difficulties that you faced making the movie, what was it like having to kind of wage war and yet defend yourself against a kid stalker? Because I'm sure it's got to be kind of tough.
Yeah. It was, I remember it was, it was a lot of fun, as making movies always is to me. But in terms of the physicality stuff, yeah, there was I remember there were a lot of days coming home at the end of the day, of 13-hour days of rolling around and being thrown around and feeling pretty exhausted and just wiped from the day, but also, enjoying it. And they had some pretty serious stunt doubles for me too. So there was some scenes where even if I had wanted to do certain things, I remember there's one scene where I think he's kind of like throwing me against walls, and they wouldn't let me do that because they felt like that was something that really needed a professional stunt person, which I'm sure they were right. So in some ways I didn't have to do all that stuff, but just the making a horror movie is always, I think, exhausting, and but in a really fun, satisfying way too.
Yeah, no kidding. And yeah, some of those stunts, you're right, they're kind of brutal, because you guys, for that climax of the film, when you're battling on the final setting, you guys are going at it, and there's just bodies being thrown, stairs breaking. And speaking of that setting, I was going to ask you, one of the main settings for that film is the abortion clinic. Was there anything, you got babies in jars there and everything on set. Was there anything that creeped you out about that? Or did you walk in going, this set looks good, this is no problem?
It's funny. People ask that a lot about when you're somebody who's been part of making horror movies, and they say, like, is it scary, when you're actually making it? And I am completely chicken shit when it comes to watching horror movies. My husband's actually a horror movie writer. He the next Saw that's coming out this Halloween, he and his partner wrote, and he's written other horror movies also. And when it comes to watching them, I am not brave at all. But yeah, the making of horror movies, it never feels scary to me on set. I don't know. I guess, because, and I now have kids and they always ask me that too. Like, is it scary to do that? And everything, on the actual set, like for anybody who's ever been to Universal Studios and gone on the tour and you see Jaws come up out of the water and, in that moment you're like, oh, it's so fake, and you realize like it's the magic of the talent of the camera people and the lighting people and the director that are able to make it look so real. But when you're doing it, the blood seems so fake, and absolutely that room that you're talking about, that abortion clinic, was a creepy space, but it was also, on a sound stage where there are, lots and lots of people milling about, and it's broad daylight, and, so it's not, without the sort of music and the lights and all that stuff, it feels sort of like, like a Halloween party might feel, where it's definitely got that sort of campy, fun scariness, but it's like I've never felt scared on a set or felt creeped out on a set.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can imagine being on that set and after director calls cut, everybody having a good time. It looks like you had a lot of fun making the movie, and I only have one more question about Milo. I was going to ask you, and you may get this about other films, but if they ever approached you for a remake of Milo, would that be something you would be interested in?
Oh my gosh, that's first of all, I'd be so flattered, and yes, of course, I would always be interested in anything like that, and that would be so fun.
Well, I'm going to throw this out there to anybody who happens to hear this episode that is more of a film writer than I am. I just do indie film, but somebody needs to rewrite and make a Milo remake and have you play the doctor in the film who protects her son Milo, and that would be awesome.
I love it. What a good idea. Well, Milo actually was an indie, so maybe maybe you should be the person making it.
Yeah, well, I can't say that I won't try then. But because we are limited on time, I'm going to go ahead and jump off the Milo train, and I'm going to let Andy come in and talk to us about House of a Thousand Corpses.
Cool.
Yeah, hey, Jennifer.
Hi, Andy.
Well, on House of a Thousand Corpses, of course, it's one of those polarizing movies from a polarizing director, but how did you initially get involved in that movie? Was that something that just kind of came your way, or did you seek it out?
It definitely came my way. I'm always sort of embarrassed to tell this story because, it's like, was I living on Mars? But I didn't know who Rob Zombie was, which, I think really worked to my advantage because I wasn't super nervous when I went in. I think if I had, and back then it was kind of like it was either the beginning of or had it, the internet wasn't such a thing back then. So yeah. It wasn't the kind of like now if I auditioned for a director, I'd Google him or her. But back then we didn't really do that, or I can't even remember. I mean, it was like, I think it was like 99. So it was, definitely the beginning stages of Googling people. But so I went in for, my agents just sent me on this audition and said the director is Rob Zombie, and like I said, I didn't know who that was, and back then Rob used to sit in on auditions, which I don't think he does anymore, and so I went in and I had this very sort of comfortable, fun audition because again I wasn't intimidated, and it's funny, some actors are great about rising to the level when they're nervous and sort of are really good about being the underdog in a room. And I've never been that kind of actor. I do much better when I feel super comfortable and like if somebody says to me like, oh, you'll probably never get this is such a long shot, then I usually cave and I don't do so great. But I have friends who are really good in that scenario. It's like the great athlete who like sees a challenge and can combat it. And unfortunately, I've never been that person. So I think for me, I was really lucky that I went in there not knowing that he was this huge rock star, and auditioned for him thinking he was just kind of this regular artistic guy who happened to have dreadlocks, and was casting this movie. So I went in, and I my first audition I remember was with Rainn Wilson, who at the time was not the star that he is today, and I thought Rainn was so cool, and then they brought us all back, and it was Rainn and Aaron Daniels and Chris Hardwick and myself, and I thought, oh my God, what an amazing group of people. And we were sitting out in the lobby before we all went into audition, and I just liked them all so much, and hoped that I'd get to work with them and hang out with them. And so it was a very sort of, it's sometimes those things are charmed where it just everything kind of happens in a really nice organic way, and that was one of those experiences for me.
Yeah, no, and I really love your performance in it, because a lot of times in horror movies, like the female co-star or whatever you want to call it, the female protagonists are always kind of like this, like whimpering, like waif, in the corner, waiting for the man to rescue her. And in this movie, your character is very confrontational and very strong, So I appreciated that definitely, and I thought you did a really great job, presenting that stronger, you and most times you were stronger than Chris or Rainn, in their roles. I mean, as far as like confronting the antagonists in this movie, so I appreciated that contrast there.
Thank you. Cool. I like that. I like that you're saying strong and not bitch, because that could also be. I mean, I think that, I also, that character got herself into trouble, but I guess she had trouble coming no matter what she did. So. Well,
yeah, and that had to be like a demanding shoot to do, that film, because there was so much going on. It seemed like, I mean, from somebody that's watching the movie, there's so much like sensory overload and things like that. And what was some of the challenges in that movie, or what was something that you liked the least about filming that?
That movie was so much fun to make. Rob and Sherry Zombie to this day are still very good friends of mine, and getting to make a movie with them, and his incredible mind and her talent was just like, it's hard to think of anything negative. I think for Sherry, and I've heard her say this in interviews, and she still says it to this day, the scene where she is stabbing me in that, run rabbit run scene, that I think was very hard for her. And it's funny because it wasn't for me at all. And she really didn't like shooting that scene. But I do remember one thing I really didn't like, was the nights that we shot that scene. We shot it in a part of California that's known for having, it's like snake country. There are a lot of rattlesnakes out in the sort of deep valley of Los Angeles. And a lot of movies, a lot of Westerns are filmed in this particular section of LA. It's like an hour outside of the city, and it's like a lot of like tall grass, and it's very dry, and just like sort of prime rattlesnake land. And I happen to be just phobically scared of snakes anyway. It's like spiders all over me and I'm fine, but snakes are a different story for me.
Yeah, sure.
So we were shooting it at night, and the scene, which you might remember, is, she's chasing me through this kind of pasture, and I'm running, and it's nighttime, and they actually had a guy whose job it was to, before I ran each time, to go through and make sure that there weren't any snakes. But I remember I just kept thinking, but like, how can he, from the time he checks it to when the cameras are ready to roll and everything's ready is like 15 minutes, so at least. So like, gives a snake plenty of time to get back out there. So I remember just thinking, and yet, it's so stupid. Like my husband, who always makes fun of me for being so scared of snakes, is like, they can hear you running from, like miles away. They're not going to like slither up to your path and then, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, the old, like, they're more afraid of you than you are of them.
Oh, yeah.
Line, which, I never really buy because I'm certain they're ready to attack me at every moment. But anyway, that scene I remember was very challenging, and, a scene where I really was actually afraid, not of Sherry chasing me, but of a snake, wrapping itself around my leg.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's the only scene that I really remember. Horror movies, you get a little tired sometimes of being those costumes. I remember when there's a scene where we're all hanging from a chandelier in a house, and Bill Moseley's wonderful character is taunting us, and that got a little uncomfortable, I think, after a few hours of shooting that scene. But
oh yeah,
on those kinds of movies, there's so many people that are so, it's very hard to complain, because you would be such a diva if you did, because there are so many people, trying to always make sure that the actors are comfortable and, getting enough, breaks if they need it, and hydrated and all that stuff. So, compared to any other job, it's, I think, pretty lovely.
It looks like everybody was having a lot of fun during the filming. I mean, just, seeing how things were going. You could tell that everybody seemed like they were having a really fun time with it. Just reading the script when you're doing your auditions and things like that, was it obvious, how crazy this movie was going to turn out, or was it kind of a surprise when you showed up on set?
That's such a good question, and I would say it was actually a surprise when I saw it. So no, I had no clue at all. I mean, I remember the first scene we shot, the four of us, Rain, Chris, and Aaron, and myself, was the scene in the with Sid, where we first stop at the that crazy gas station store, and so I remember seeing that set and thinking oh my God, this is like nothing I've ever seen before.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, there was definitely that, but I don't think, and I think this is just true of anything that Rob Zombie touches, or puts his hand into. He has such a clear vision of what he's I'm sure you know this, he's an artist, and he's actually like a painter, and so I think he has such a clear sensibility in terms of the visual look of something. So there were glimpses of that from seeing the sets and stuff, but I don't think it's really until you see the movie on a screen that you realize oh, this is what he was creating,
Right.
And it felt more when we were filming it. It felt more like what an indie, it was made by Universal, so it was a studio film, but it felt like what an indie film feels like. It felt kind of like guerrilla filmmaking, and Rob gives you a lot of sort of freedom within the scene to try new things. So, so I guess no, to answer you, I didn't have any real sense of, and certainly not from reading the script. When I first read the script, I didn't have much of a sense of what it was going to look like. It read like an indie script to me. And then when you saw it, and it was so big and colorful and bizarre, that wasn't how I read the script.
Yeah.
But I was, of course, delighted to see that that's what he turned it into.
Oh yeah, like you said, he's got an amazing vision, and just the things that he creates. It's very visually eye-catching, and so you had mentioned Universal originally had been involved in, I think you guys they had some issues with it getting distributed. Was there ever a time that you were worried about it, that it would never get released?
Yeah, definitely. So I think what happened, as I remember it, and I'm sure Rob has talked about this in interviews and knows it better than I do, but I think what happened was they saw the film and were so kind of disturbed by it that they pulled out of it, if I'm remembering correctly. And then I feel like it went to somebody else before it went to Lionsgate. Like I think for 5 minutes, it was going to be distributed by like some other company. But you kind of, after you've worked in this business, and I'm sure other businesses are like this too, for a while, you start to sort of embrace an attitude of like, I'll never believe anything's going to happen until I'm actually like sitting in the theater, watching it, or until I actually receive a paycheck, because so many things, I have a friend who says they're going to write a book called like 1,000 Reasons Why I Didn't Get the Job, because it's like there are so many reasons why things don't happen.
Right.
And so often they don't, and so often you think like, oh, this is going to be the big thing, and this is, and then for whatever reason it doesn't happen. But so yeah, it sounds very sort of pessimistic or jaded, and maybe it is, but I always thought like, oh, it's probably not going to happen. We'll make it, and then it'll get shelved. And but I think the thing that was really encouraging to me was that Rob never felt that way. Like he kept saying like, oh, it's fine. It's gonna, and I don't know if he 100% believed that, or if he was saying that kind of for our sakes or for his own sanity or whatever, but he seemed to never doubt, and, not from an arrogant standpoint, but, he was just like, whatever, it'll fine. And he also was so smart about like understanding that even negative publicity is publicity, so he was like, whatever, they're talking about it, so Definitely. He liked, so I think a part of him was thrilled that Universal was like, being interviewed and saying like, it's outrageous, it's disgusting, he was like, yeah, good, keep talking, people will be intrigued. And I think also because he understands his fan base, and that they feel like, bring it on. So I think to answer your question, yes, I was nervous about that, but I don't think he was.
Okay. Well, hey, we also want to give you some time to share with our listeners what you're working on now, any future projects that you have coming up that you want to just share with our listeners. Go right ahead.
I'm in the process of writing something right now that I probably should not talk about yet, because I'm writing it with a writing partner. But yeah, that's kind of it. I'm having a lot of fun these days, trying to work at it from that angle of writing and producing and that type of thing. And as I mentioned, my husband has a film coming out in the fall, Jigsaw, and so I've been, sort of supporting him through that process also.
Hey, Jennifer, this is Dave again. I'm here with Andy. I can't bite my tongue longer than I need to. Thank your husband from the bottom of our hearts that we're getting more Jigsaw story, because no, I'm serious. The Saw franchise is one of the best long-running horror franchise that didn't dip off and go hysterical. It kept that solid, graphic, kind of nail-biting experience. So I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that we were all stoked to hear that there was another Saw movie coming out. And so
that's cool.
That's just freaking awesome.
Good. I will tell him and his partner Josh Stolberg, who they wrote it together. I will definitely pass that on to them. Thanks for saying it.
And then you mentioned that you're working on writing something right now, and I know you had already written something before. And correct me if I'm wrong. It's labeled as a mockumentary, but it was like 2004, 2005. It was The Life Coach.
Yes, I wrote that with my partner, Lila Lee, and that was sort of the beginning of when we were we were hearing about life coaches, and we thought it was, at the time, we thought it was kind of a funny idea that you would hire somebody to help you with your life. And we thought, what if there was like this life coach in LA who, because there are sort of people like this in LA anyway, who kind of never let themselves be seen, but everybody reveres them and, thinks that they're responsible for anything good that happens to them. And, but they're really like a huge mess themselves. And so we created this, Christopher Guest, I love Christopher Guest, who makes, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he makes a lot of mockumentaries. And so we thought we'd like to make something sort of, attempting his style.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, thanks.
And then last thing to say about Life Coach, too, is I noticed it's floating around out there. There's a lot of social platforms. You can find it and watch it. And there's a lot of cool people in this movie. I know you're in it, but some of your co-stars from other films that make appearances. It looks kind of neat. I'm going to have to check it out. It wasn't until writing this up that I came across it, because it wasn't a horror movie, so it wasn't in my watch list. I was like, oh, Jennifer put this together. I'm going to have to see what this is about. And I was able to check out a trailer, and yeah, I'm very excited for it. So I just wanted to congratulate you on, not only just the actress side, but the writing side. And it looks like you're continuing with the writing, which is phenomenal. And, well, you got the Black Cat support, so that's for sure.
Thank you.
We just want to say thanks. We're very appreciative of you, spending some time with us and, giving our listeners a little insight into your films that you've been in and, just who you are. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. I like what you're making. I think it's very cool. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, our constant listeners, for tuning in to this really fun conversation with Jennifer. She's very talented and kind, and a treat to talk to. Dave and me definitely enjoyed hearing the behind-the-scenes stories of some of our favorite movies. We hope you will check out all of Jennifer Jostyn's films, and I am now on a quest to find Vampires on Bikini Beach. That definitely sounds like a winner for sure. As for us, you can find us in the usual social media spots. On Twitter, we are at Black Cat Podcast. You can find us on Facebook and Horror Amino as well. Our email is blackcatpodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to send us any feedback on the show, or maybe themes that you'd like us to talk about, or even movies to review. You can listen to all of our episodes on our website, www.blackcatshadow.com, and there you will find links to our show on various media outlets, as well as a link to our movie store, where the proceeds help us to continue with the show. And remember, guys, take a closer look at the world around you, and you might just find that it is stranger and more mysterious than you thought, especially in the Black Cat Shadow.